Hello. So today we're gonna talk about Stephen King. So I've done a lot of horror videos. No, I've done two. I've done two horror videos. One about late 20th century mass market paperback horror that I loved, and one about more modern horror that I've loved. And both times I've had the caveat: we're not talking about Stephen King because we just don't need to get involved with that. And so today we're going to talk about Stephen King. On my old channel, my Stephen King videos were like my big ones because Stephen King is, huge author. I used to do these long walk lecture videos that are now some of the only videos of mine you can find because some asshole and idiot decided to review them and really give me some notes about why I was wrong about everything. I never watched them. But I know that they existed, and the Long Walk fandom on Tumblr hated that guy. And I don't even know if they knew that I had previously been in the Long Walk fandom. They were just like, this girl's way better. I think it's because I was a Gavri's truther and the man wasn't. Anyway, so today we're talking about I have some categories. We got Stephen King, the good, the bad, and the ugly. This is not like all of my favorite Stephen King books, and when it comes to the bad, I only have a physical copy of one of them. I will mention the other one, but that's because with Stephen King at this point, I really only keep his books that I have either in hardcover or like a really nice paperback. Because sometimes there's like not a hardcover of The Long Walk. There isn't. And if they ever release one, I'll probably get a hardcover and replace my current copy. But since The Long Walk was for 15 years almost like my favorite book of all time, I figured I would keep a copy of it around, even if it's not on hardcover. So, the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is obviously just Stephen King books that I think are genuinely great. The bad are the Stephen King books that I didn't like. Actually, there are two of them. If I'm thinking in my head, I don't have either of them because I didn't have either of them in hardcover. I actually do have at least one of them in hardcover now, but it's just in the book closet. So it hasn't been put onto my shelves yet, and I'm not going to be digging it out because it's a big one. So it's at the bottom of that. So. And the ugly are ones that I think maybe either haven't aged well or have some really kind of questionable plot points, but that I deeply enjoy. So the good Stephen King books. These are mostly books that I think there are a lot of Stephen King classics, and I don't remember any books here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 books here. 3 of them are what I would probably call classic King, and there are books that you probably see recommended for people when it comes to starting Stephen King. But honestly, I think any of these books will be a good starting place for Stephen King. The first one is out of these 3, Salem's Lot. I enjoy both Carrie and The Shining. Speaking of, I got this at Barnes & Noble when I was in high school, and I am still obsessed with it. This is like Carrie, Salem's Lot, The Shining. Salem's Lot is his vampire story, and I just think it's super fun. I read it like 100 times. Not that many times. I haven't read it more than I read The Long Walk. I read The Long Walk like 100 times, but it was one of my first Stephen King books that I've read. I think it was my second or third Stephen King book. And it's just so it's just such a good horror novel. Like, it's just sharp. It just has everything that you're looking for. It's good. It's really good. I like the characters. I like the vampires. I'm obsessed with Jimmy Cody, and I'm obsessed with the fact that they wouldn't let him get eaten by rats. I'm obsessed with it. It's a good one. As well as that, I cannot talk about Stephen King and not mention this book. This book is, I mean, obviously there's so many Stephen King books that have just lasting presence, but this one did not recently, I guess anymore, but in the 2010s get a remake and got a legion of new fans. And a lot of these new fans, when they read the book, could not get past a certain scene in the sewers, and now you all know what book I'm talking about. It's a fucking good book. It is so good. I actually very recently read this book. I reread it last November. And this book is very sad. It's about childhood. It's about growing up. At the very end with the all the destruction scenes, those always really get me. And it is a very good book. And yeah, it's a very good book, and it's got some really decent scares in it. Like, it's got some decent creepy bits to it, and it's some decent parts where it's like, oh yeah, no, like the town is like really the horrifying part of this, like we've got this murder clown eating people, sure, but we also have so much goddamn abuse. Like, the Eddie Cochran bits were just gnarly. But yeah, no, I love it. It is a great book. Then again, always talked about when we're talking about these ones is maybe this one also got a remake in the 2010s, but unlike the It remake, this one was not seen very highly. I haven't watched this one actually. I have it, but I haven't watched it yet. That's The Stand. So The Stand is great. This was my first Stephen King book, by the way. This is not the complete and uncut version. This is the original 800-page version. And that is the version I originally read, except for it was not in hardcover. It was like a little paperback that fell apart as I was reading it. But Stand was my first Stephen King book, and it took me a while because I started reading Stephen King. My dad made me wait until I was 12, and I turned 12 July 16th, before my 7th grade year. And so I started reading The Stand, and it took me pretty much the entire year. But it is the characters. The characters get me every time. I love the characters. I have moved completely from being a Nick girl to a Lloyd Henry. I love Lloyd Henry. He's my favorite. But just no, it's fantastic. It's The Stand. Then these also weren't in any particular order. They were just in the order that I like took them off my bookshelf. We've got one this is the book where even if you get people who are too highbrow for Stephen King, they will admit to enjoying this one. I had an English professor when I was in college he knew I liked Stephen King, and I was an English major at a small private liberal arts school. So like, there weren't very many of us, so our professors got to know us pretty well. And he knew I liked Stephen King, and he admitted, like, yeah, no, I actually read that book this summer, and it was actually like really good. It's got a lot of, like, you can tell that this man grew up in this time frame because of how detailed everything is. It's 11/22/63. It's a great book. 11/22/63 is like, really, I think, Stephen King's last great book. Like, I've enjoyed his books since then. I really liked Revival. I've only read Revival once. I should really give Revival a reread, but I remember really enjoying it when I read it. And The Outsider was fine. I didn't mind the Bill Hodge trilogy, or Holly was fine. I just read that one. You know, like I've enjoyed his books since then, but this was his last truly great book, and it came out in like 2011, I think. But we'll give him a pass because he had so many greats. 2012. But no, this is about a guy going back in time to stop the JFK assassination. It did also get a TV series, which I actually didn't mind. It had some changes from the book, but I thought it was charming, even though James Franco was there. So there's that. And then this one, I can't not talk about The Long Walk here. This was my favorite book for like 10 years of my life. Like, I read this book when I was in the 8th grade, and I was immediately obsessed with it. Like, it is just everything. Like, this was everything. And it's about these 100 teenagers just walking until they die, and they get shot, stuff like that, and all this. It's like a battle royale. It's not a battle royale situation. They're not fighting each other, but it's that sort of death competition situation, and I love this book. I still do it. I don't consider it my favorite book anymore. I've finally admitted that it's Lord of the Flies, because I don't keep multiple copies of books. Lord of the Flies is my exception. Also, I was just flipping through here because I have some annotations, and one of the things I like to do is, because I read the Bachman version of this book so many times, in the not the like Richard Bachman version, but in the Bachman books, and they made some changes, and I have read this book so many times that I noticed something as small as changing that to the, because it definitely was originally the composition service will be hot by noon. It was not that. It was the, for sure. And I know they took out Jesus Mulligan. God. Anyway. It's a great book. Okay, The Bad. Okay, before I talk about the one that I have to hold out, I want to talk about the Tommyknockers and Bag of Bones. Didn't like either of them. I found them both boring. Boring as hell. The Tommyknockers did at the very least have the vagina tentacles, which were kind of interesting at the very least. But Bag of Bones took me so long to get through. Like, what I had to do, I think I was still in high school. I think it was in upper high school. I think I was like maybe a junior or senior in high school. I eventually had to just like power my way through a chapter every single night, and normally like I'm a fast reader, and I'm normally like just sit down and power through it kind of person, and that book took me a month. The Tommyknockers, yeah, just boring. And then this one I didn't hate as much until I reread it recently, and I was just exhausting in the worst possible way. So I read this book 3 times. The first couple times I didn't hate it, and it does have some scenes that I enjoy. And I wouldn't say I hate this book. Like, I don't think I've given a Stephen King book under 3 stars. 3 is like my minimum for King, just because I've been reading so much Stephen King for so long that he feels kind of like home to me. It's very comforting reading a Stephen King book for me, especially as I kind of moved into more intense horror. Like Stephen King is like a little warm blanket. But when I say, I think these are just my least favorites, so I wouldn't say I hated them, because I did give them like 3 stars on Goodreads, but like they weren't good. It's desperation. Like, what's up with this book? Like, it does have its moments that I think are really cool, like the sheriff and the other people like rotting from the inside when they like kind of consume the spirit. And I will forever remember that little boy squeezing through the soaping himself up and squeezing through the jail cell. Like, that's lived forever in my head, rent free. But yeah, no, overall, there are some times when, like, for the most part, Stephen King religion, he generally, because he grew up rural, takes the stance of religious people being nut jobs. Sometimes he does it well when they're not. In this case, we've got religion that doesn't make me want to bash my head against the wall. This is the opposite case. That's why. That's the only reason why. Yeah, there's that. And then The Ugly. I've got 2 books here, both of which I enjoyed a lot. One of them hasn't aged very well. The other one has some aspects to it that are like kind of questionable and really gross. So the one that hasn't aged well, but is honestly one of my favorites. This was like my 2nd or 3rd season. I can't remember if I read this one or Salem's Lot first, but it was up there. It was one of the first ones I read, and that's Thinner. I love Thinner. This is the Bachman hardcover. That's why it looks like this. It's not fancy or expensive. It's, I believe it's a book club edition. So it's not like anything special, but it's, is it a book club edition? Is it not a book club? Is it something special? I don't think it is. You see these everywhere, but it might not actually be a book club edition. Huh. You learn something new every time. Look at that. I thought it was. Anyway, so this is the story. This is about, the reason this hasn't aged well is because it is about like Romani curses. And that's obviously not the words they use because it was the 80s. And it's, yeah, it hasn't aged well. It is, however, super gross and super fun and just batshit insane. It's not even at the end, all the time, everywhere. I'm forever thinking about the guy whose face keeps sliding off. Like, what the hell was that? I love Thinner. I love Thinner a lot. And the other one, I honestly, I bought this copy of the book in Maine, in Bangor, Maine. After my senior year of high school, I got to pick where we went on vacation. I picked Maine because of Stephen King. As a Dreamcatcher, I love Dreamcatcher. I know it's weird. I know that the shit weasels are questionable, and that's why I put it under The Ugly, because I know that they're questionable. I know that it just like, we've got the weird like thing with the disabled kid and like the weird alien thing. However, this book is so fun. I really like this book. I even like the stupid movie that they made with Earl from My Name is Earl. Jason Lee was in this movie. Why? I don't know, but I love this movie. I think it's, again, this one's like more of an acquired taste. Like some of the books that I held up for like the good are like ones that I think most people will agree are very good novels. This one I know is not. This one I know is like generally one of the ones that people put up as like their least favorites. So I think it's very much a personal thing, but I really enjoy Dreamcatcher. It also doesn't hurt that this one does take place like in the winter, and like as a North Dakotan, that makes winter settings always make horror books more scary, because I just look outside and go like, ah, and if it's not winter, I look outside and imagine what could be, and then I'm like, ah. So that's also that. But yeah, that's some Stephen King talking, the good, the bad, the ugly, and that's all. That's everything.